Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. As always, thank you so much for all your questions this week. I'm going to do my best to get through as many of them as I can. If you have questions for next week's Q&A video, you know where to put them in the comments. If you want to support the channel, you can buy some of my music that I make with Ragdoll. There are links in the video description, as well as discount links if you want to grab some of these very, very fine little stomp box toppers from the Home Musician. Alrighty, shall we get into the questions? Maybe before we do that, I'm playing my PRS Mirror today, which is totally stock. It's a really great sounding guitar. I often enjoy using this guitar as a kind of different flavor from my single cut. It basically has the same pickups just without the covers, and because it is a thinner body shape and because it's got 24 frets, it's kind of got a different thing going on. So I have really been enjoying this guitar today. That's why I'm playing it. There were a bunch of questions though about the guitar I played last week, the custom double neck that my dad made, and the weight was one thing a few people asked about. So I weighed it and it weighs 6.3 kilograms. I'm not going to convert that to pounds. I don't know what it is. You've got the magic of the internet at your fingertips to do that. But for comparison, this guitar weighs a little over 3 kilograms. So it is basically more than 2 PRS mirrors. I think my single cut weighs 3.5, 3.6 kilograms or something like that. So yeah, it's a pretty heavy guitar, but kind of not as heavy as I expected. I expected it to be tipping the scales at like 7 or 8. And the other question was about the woods it's made out of. The necks are made out of one piece of mahogany each, so there's no scarf joint or anything like that in there. And then the body is a composite. Basically, the kind of the cores around the necks are mahogany, and then the kind of the wings and the centerpiece, I believe the timber's called Meranti, which it's kind of a, I forget where it's from, but it's basically got a similar kind of grain as mahogany, but it's a lot lighter. So there's kind of the heavier cores and then the lighter offset timber in there. And of course, then it's like triple bound on both sides. It's a pretty crazy instrument when you look at the kind of workmanship that went into it. And was there another one about that? Oh yeah, the pickups in that particular guitar are actually Wilkinson pickups for whatever reason, probably because, you know, there were 4 of them kicking around and they happen to be humbuckers, and I actually think they sound pretty good. I can't remember the specs on them, but I do remember they were pretty affordable. They weren't, you know, anywhere near as much as a set of Duncans or something like that. So yeah, maybe that's like kind of a sleeper pickup out there, the Wilkinsons. They sound pretty good. Alrighty, how am I liking the Atomic CLR? I did mention this a couple of videos ago that I've got a CLR here, and I'm going to do a demo video about it. It's just one of those things that, you know, how do you demo a full range speaker over the medium of YouTube? So I'm kicking a few ideas around there. I'm actually playing through it right now. It is really, really loud. It's pretty flat sounding, which I like. I found that presets that I dial in on my Adams monitors translate really, really well to the CLR. The CLR kind of picks up where the Adams leave off. No matter how loud I crank the Adams, the CLRs can go a lot louder. And it's a shame that there's no gigs at the moment, because I would love to actually take this to a gig and try it at full stage volume against, like, you know, not only drums, but maybe like another guitar amp or a loud bass amp. But I have a few ideas to get around that. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it at the moment. It sounds great. I've got it set up with the FM3. You're hearing the FM3 recorded direct, obviously, but the CLR in the room is pretty loud, pretty awesome. Another pedal, well, another piece of gear, I should say, that happens to be a pedal that I've been asked about is the Poly Digit, and what I'm doing with it and how I'm enjoying it. If you saw my last video, I was doing a bunch of stuff with this using the built-in synth engines, which are awesome and so much fun. This is honestly just such a fun pedal. I'll have another video over the next couple of weeks. New firmware for it came out yesterday, I think, which I haven't installed. So that's probably going to be the rest of my Friday afternoon right there, playing around with the new Digit firmware. But I've said it before and I've said it again. I've said it before and I've said it again. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This is just one of my favorite pedals ever. It is so much So much fun. I should turn it around so you can keep looking at it there. And the other question about the FM3, well, another question about another piece of gear that happens to be about the FM3, using a low cut and using the input EQ. They're two of the parameters that I do play around with the most. My kind of default setting on just about everything is in the cab block to set the low cut at 80 Hertz. I basically mention this at the start of nearly every video I do with these, whether it's a 5-minute tones video or whether it's a deep dive video. And I love the input EQ on the amp block. You can do so much with just that. I always used to use like a drive block to kind of boost my tones, and now more often than not, I just use either the input preamp boost in the amp block, or I use the input EQ to shape it, because you can do so much with input EQ. I've actually got both of those going on at the moment. Another thing that I do live is I'll use a parametric EQ block after the cab block to kind of sculpt my tone. I don't have that on this particular patch. I'm just using the low cut at 80, and I mean, it sounds pretty glorious in my opinion. And I've got a ducking delay on this patch as well, which is something I need to talk about in a future video. Alrighty, does my dad still play guitar? He certainly does. He probably plays more acoustic guitar more than anything else these days, but he's actually not only still playing, he's still teaching as well. These questions all come from Who's Your Daddy? What's up, man? Thanks for the questions as always. Do we play to a click live? No, we don't. We just play live, which is great fun. It's a great challenge, and it's always one of those things that we think about, like, should we, put a bunch of stuff on tracks and play to a click and basically map out our whole production, or should we kind of keep it live, or should we just use a click and maybe get some big visualizations and things like that going on? I think once gigs start happening again, whenever that is, that's something we'll think about a little bit more, because I do like those shows where, I'm not that into the tracks thing live. I don't think it would really benefit us too much, being a power trio and given the way a lot of our songs sound. But, the kind of background visuals and things like that, having all of that timed and synced, having my patch changes on my FM3 automated, that would kind of be awesome. I would be all about that live, because I could jump around like an idiot more, which I certainly like to do. So that's something that we've been meaning to look at, because we're on in-ears now as well. That would make it a lot easier. So yeah, that's kind of something to think about. And do I take 2 guitars to shows? It depends on the show, to be honest. I'm pretty confident with like the PRS guitars that I play live. I basically never break strings on them live. And if I do, they've got locking machine heads, so it's really, really quick to do that. But if we're doing a local show, I'll take 2 guitars. If we're touring, most of the time I just take 1 guitar. I did get an Enki dual guitar case, but we put the guitar and the bass in that for when we're touring, which cuts down on space a lot. That thing's awesome. I got to do a video about it. But yeah, if we're doing that, I mean, the last Australian tour we did, I took 1 guitar, I used 1 set of strings for all the shows, and I only just recently changed that set of strings. I know it's kind of gross, but yeah, I've found that I can kind of get away with that with the PRS stuff. It's just, it kind of does the job and it works, which I really like. That lick really kind of started promising, and it went downhill from there. The biggest show that I've ever played, this is a good one. Realistically, it's probably the 2016 edition of Rocklahoma. I put that video up about a month or so ago on the channel, so you can actually go and watch that show. But in terms of the actual biggest stage, we played a festival in Switzerland, also in 2016. It was actually our very first gig on our very first European tour. So it was our first gig in Europe, and it was just this gigantic stage. I remember it was so big. The PA was so immense. It was this kind of Alpine Bike Fest cultural event, live gig. They had like a full frontal nude show after us on this giant arena-sized stage. It was a crazy gig. There's a little bit of footage from it, which I'll put up now while I'm talking, so you can kind of see us headbanging and jumping around. But I always remember that particular show for the reason that, people were into what we were doing. They were kind of like, a little bit hesitant to kind of really get into it the way an American crowd would. And, then the Full Frontal Nude show came on and like everybody basically rushed the stage. And I've never seen people so into a show like that. I mean, can you blame them? But the other thing was it was free and it was like a public event as well. Maybe that's just how they roll in Switzerland, and you know what? Good on them. But that was realistically probably the biggest stage that I've ever played. The biggest show we've done in our hometown, Perth, was probably a couple of years ago. We opened for Uriah Heep at the Astor Theatre, and if it wasn't sold out, it was pretty close to sold out, and that was amazing. I'd always wanted to play at that venue, and we got to do it. We've done it a few times since then, and it's a great place to play. Uriah Heep are an amazing live band, and they're really, really lovely people, and their whole crew were great as well. So that one was a real treat. All right, what's my favorite amp, and do I prefer the Axe-Fx to my real amps? I play my Axe-Fx every single day. I play it way more than my real amps. But at the moment, probably, well, I think realistically my favorite amp is my Soldano Hot Rod 50 Plus. That is the last amp I would ever sell if I had to sell any of them. But I'm really enjoying my Chariotone Molecular. That's great. And my old Mesa Dual Rectifier is an amazing amp as well. So it would be a kind of hard split between the three of those. But that's the beauty of something like the FM3, which I'm playing at the moment, or the Axe-Fx 3. The models of those amps are so accurate and they feel so good to play and they sound so good that, we've crossed that singularity. We went past that a long time ago, and I just kind of treat the Axe-Fx like any other amp, where I approach it in the way where I want to find my sound and I want to get my sound out of it, and it lets me do that, which I'm pretty stoked about. Following on from that, another question: if I could only ever play Marshall or Mesa amps for the rest of my life, what would I do? Realistically, I would probably get some kind of Mesa Mark Series amp. As much as I'm a Marshall guy, as much as I love those, I think the Mesas are a little bit more versatile, and you can kind of do a Marshall-y thing with a Mark Series, but you can't do a Mark Series thing with a Marshall. I mean, if you asked me this question tomorrow, I would probably give you the opposite answer or something like that. But yeah, like an old Mark IV or a Mark V, or, a tri-axis and a power amp would probably give me most of what I want. But, again, that's another reason why I love the Axe-Fx so much. This guitar is so nice to play. I need to play it more. I need to use it in more videos. Alrighty, let's keep rolling the Fractal Artist Series presets. If you guys want to hear me play through some of those, because they've done Devin Townsend, Steve Stevens, and Pete Thorne so far, I'll do it if there's a demand for it there. I figure that they're probably going to do a whole bunch more of those, so I might wait until they've got 5 or 6 of them out, just so I can kind of do like the best bits of each, but they all sound pretty amazing. I particularly like the Steve Stevens Flesh for Fantasy one, whatever that clean sound is. That is just a glorious, glorious thing. If you've got a Fractal FM3 or Axe-Fx 3 and you haven't downloaded those yet, go and do it, because there's a lot to learn from those particular patches. They are awesome. We're nearly at the end of this. This is a question about amps again. Do I still have my vintage Modern? I don't. Sadly, I sold it. As much as I love that amp, I would still recommend it to anybody who wants a really good, newer kind of Marshall that can kind of do the classic Plexi style tones. I think it's fantastic. But I sold mine so that I could buy my Chariotone Molecular, which just kind of fits what I do, that teeny weeny little bit more. But, the vintage Modern, like I said in all the reviews I did of it, like I said in all the videos I did of it, it's a great sounding amp. It's super underrated, and I'd buy another one in a heartbeat, and I would if I got that as a backline amp, it would keep me happy. So really cool amp. And my Recto, is it running at 220 or is it running at 110? And I'm using a step down transformer. It is running at 220. So it's obviously a model that came out for Australian use, which might explain why it's a Rev G everything else except for the little badge, the logo. It's like a transition model. I suspect it's got something to do with the stock they sent down to Australia. But you know, that is an interesting little riddle right there. Alrighty, that brings us to the end of this week's Q&A. If you have any questions for next week's video, get them in the comments. Like I said, if you want to support the channel, all the links are in the video description. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, be good to one another, and I need to try and play some stuff with this guitar now because I'm digging it. See you next time. Thank you.